Welcome to the Smart Connector, the podcast that helps entrepreneurs be the leader their ideal people love. Build your influence, wealth and success, attract others for all the right reasons, and become a smart connector, the architect of your amazing business and life. I met John through a mutual friend of ours, and he is a fantastic person to know in property. He has over 40 years experience running estate agencies, doing development, flipping properties, everything that there is to know about property, he knows. So John is a fantastic person to interview, and I really enjoyed the time spent with him. I hope you will as well. Enjoy this telephone interview between us. Welcome to the Smart Connector podcast. Today I'm delighted to be interviewing John Howard, who is a UK property developer and professional with over 40 years experience, having sold and purchased over 3,500 houses, apartments and developments. His most recent development is the Winerack in Ipswich, which I went to see last week. It's a staggeringly gorgeous waterfront development overlooking the marina, and we'll be talking about that later in the interview. John's experience is vast, from buying traditional houses, hotels and large scheme developments to running property businesses such as Auction House UK and the Fine & Country Estate Agency franchise. He's also a published author of 3 books about property investment and development for newcomers, advanced property and development, and buying and selling at auctions. And as if he isn't busy enough, he's also chairman of the Ipswich Conservative Association, has been campaigning vigorously on their behalf. So welcome, John. It's lovely to have you here.
Morning, Jane. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. It's just a real privilege to have somebody who has such incredible experience in the property industry to interview.
That's very kind of you. I sound a bit tired sitting here listening to all that, I have to say. Sounds like I've been busy.
Well, it's a lifetime of work, isn't it, really, John?
It is, yeah. Well, it's my passion as well.
Absolutely. So you started early in property, didn't you? So tell us about how you got into it.
I was very fortunate. So my father was a grocer in Felixstowe, and he had a couple of shops. And then when he was 60, he decided he wanted to be an estate agent. But of course, everyone knew him as the grocer. So,
right.
So that's a bit of a tricky transformation, really. To be fair to him, he had been an insurance agent up north, and then came down and bought a couple of shops. So he was a bit of an entrepreneur himself, and successful in his own right. And then he decided that the supermarkets were on their way, and that he wouldn't be able to compete with them, which is proved to be absolutely right. So he decided to buy an existing estate agent. The only problem was, as I said, he didn't have any real estate agency knowledge. And of course, even today, anybody can set up an estate agency without any qualifications. They can't do in Ireland, they can't do in many parts of Europe, but they can do in Great Britain. So he took the business over, and he just jogged along with one secretary, really. In those days, he used to close at lunchtime, and it was all very, steady, if you like. And I used to help him in the holidays, holding the tape measure. As we used to do in those days, there was no infrared measuring. In fact, I bought one of the very first of those when I took the business over.
Okay.
So we hold the tape, and I used to cycle around in the holidays, telling him where for sale boards were. He'd go and knock on the door and try and get them for sale for his own company, and I used to get a bit of commission for that. So all the way through, really, from a very young age, and also I think people who are in business themselves and have children, sitting around the dinner table, chatting and so on, it gives you that feel for business from a very young age.
Oh, definitely. I think, yes, children definitely absorb influences. Definitely. So it's in the blood, really, isn't it, John?
It's in the blood, and I was always keen to try and buy and sell. At one stage, I was trying to buy and sell a few, bikes and things like that from the front garden. My mother wasn't very happy about it, but there we go. And so on. So there's always something going on, and there was always business being spoken in the house, really.
Yes.
And I think, and even my grandparents, they had 2 shoe shops. So again, my mother was involved in that. So all the way through, there was the influence, a self-employed sort of business, entrepreneurial influence, really. Yeah.
Yes, yes, which I'm sure must have helped. So what was your first big step then?
Well, my first big step really was to leave school at 17 and join my father, who'd been ill, and the business had really run down to nothing. So he came out of hospital on my 17th birthday, virtually, and got back into work, and I joined him to help him. And then he went back into hospital 4 months later. So I was left with the secretary and me trying to run a business. In those days, all estate agents used to do a number of things. We had insurance brokers, small insurance brokers, obviously. We had an agency for a building society where people would come in and take money out. That was the least permanent in those days.
Yeah.
We had the property management side of it, and also we were trying to sell the odd house. It was a great grounding in business, and also the fact we were losing money. There's no better way to learn about a business than one that's losing money.
Oh, for sure. So that's a lot of responsibility at a very early age, John. It's almost like a baptism of fire. Right.
It didn't go to baptisms of fire. I was out there trying to value properties and all the rest of it. He then recovered again and he came back, and things improved a little bit. But we were never on the same wavelength because I want to modernise everything. He didn't want to do anything really modernise, and he just wants to jog along. And on my 18th birthday, I managed to buy 2 properties. So my mother lent me a little bit of money, and the bank manager, who in those days you knew who your bank manager is, and even now I don't know who my bank manager is these days.
Yes.
Half the time, which is desperately sad. But they lent me the balance. I had a little bit saved up, and I bought 2 properties, both with sitting tenants. In those days, you'd pay 50% of the open market value if they were sitting tenants. You couldn't. In those days, there was no such thing as short hold tenancy, so you couldn't get them out. So I bought both properties, and I sold one of the flats. It was 2 flats. Sold a flat and a cottage. I sold one of them to the tenant virtually immediately for nearly what I paid for the whole thing, and that obviously really got me started. In fact, Property TV we've done a 2-episode film about it, and we went back and filmed.
Really? Wow.
So that was good fun.
That is very, very impressive.
Yeah, well, it's at the end of the day, I had advantages, and I took a full use, if you like, of my advantage I had.
Yes. Okay, so after that, John, I mean, I know you've got decades of experience, so I'd love to hear about the highs and the lows.
That was obviously very exciting. 18 years old to be buying a couple of properties. And I realised after being in the estate agency a month or two that really estate agents okay, but buying and selling is where the money was, not being at everyone's beck and call. So once I did that first deal, obviously you can then move on to another one, which is what I did. I bought the business off my father at 19 because he was going to sell it to another company, and that sale fell through. And the guy who was buying it wanted to keep me on, so I thought, well, I might as well buy it myself. So I managed to do that. So I bought the business, changed the name, and we transformed it really. We sort of doubled the amount of properties we sold in the first year. Well, that wasn't too difficult, to be fair. But we improved year on year. And then I sold it when I was 24, brought a manager in. And if you ever want to sell a small business, always bring someone in to help run it who's got the money to buy it. Because then there's always a chance they'll buy it off you. A friend of mine, he was already an estate agent, and his father was a dentist, so they've got plenty of money, those dentists, haven't they?
Yes.
So,
yes.
Plenty of money. Take a lot off me anyway.
Yeah.
So I got him to buy the business off me, which is good, because at the time I just met a guy called Robert Boyce, and Robert Boyce was a very successful businessman, and he'd been doing a few deals in London and property deals in London and so on, but he wanted to come out of London at the time and do property deals elsewhere. I met him, and he very kindly agreed to back me. And from then, from sort of 1986 really to 1992, 93, we did a number of deals, and I still do. In fact, I just had a phone call just before we started from his son, who I still do property deals with now. We're looking at a couple of deals up north at the moment together. And all the backers I've had over the years, I've retained. So I've worked with the Boyce family, for instance, for over 30 years. and others like them. Yeah.
Well, I mean that is one of the things that I think is so unusual about you, John, is that you have managed to maintain relationships with key investors really over
Yeah.
decades. There are so many people in property, so many wannabe developers or investors that
Yes.
burn relationships. Would you say that that's one of the most important ingredients in your success as well?
Well, it's interesting. I've always taken the view of never to fall out of anyone. All help it. Never end up in court if you can all help it. If you can negotiate a deal, negotiate the deal. Pride becomes before a fall. If I was going to be critical of my career looking back, I would say that I've probably done too much with partners. And I mean, I do a number of things on my own as well. But I've probably done too much with backers and partners. The difficulty is when you're in a situation with backers and partners, you have to feed them deals. If you don't feed them deals, they go off and do them with someone else. They always come first. And I think that's the difference between perhaps me and perhaps other developers, is that I always put my backers first, or have done over the years. And if I'm going to do a property deal with a different backer, I've got 2 or 3 fairly big ones, then I always explain to them why I'm not doing it with them. Some people hide the fact they're doing deals on their own without their partner or backer. I've never done that. I always tell them why I'm doing it on my own, or may I do this on my own because of this or that. I always give them the opportunity. And what you do find is that different backers are comfortable with different types of deals. So if you're doing a number of different types of deals, you've got different backers for each deal. And
Yes.
I think that's also important. So, for instance, I've got one very good backer who I've known, again, for 30-odd years, 25 years. And he's a builder. So he loves getting his hands dirty. So I'm constantly persuading him that we just sell it on and not have to not do the work. Well, he loves doing the work because he's a builder. I mean, what does a builder do when they buy a house? The first thing they do when they buy a new house, a builder, to live in, is they put an extension on it, even if it needs it or not. They can't resist it.
No.
Because they're builders. That's what they do. So I'm constantly battling nicely with him to make sure that why are we going to do this property up and make another 200,000 where we can sell it for 350,000 now? There's no point. We'll also sell it for 350 profit and move on to the next one.
Yes.
Of course, you have to find the next deal, and that's the other problem. If you don't find the next deal, they then come back and say, look, John, we sold it because you told me to sell it, and now you found us nothing for 6 months. We might as well have done it and squeezed more out of that deal. So it's a constant battle.
Yes.
To find deals and to keep backers happy, as well as feeding my own deals. And of course, you've just got to keep grinding out the deals, finding the deals. And the more people you work with, the more relationships you have with people, the more friends you are with everyone, the more chance you have of doing deals. Why on earth would you want to alienate yourself to anyone if you're trying to find property deals? You want to be everyone's friend.
Absolutely.
And treat everyone. And I also, most importantly, as I said to the kids over the years, we treat everyone the same, whether it's the gardener, the groom, whoever it is, or lord, whoever. They all get treated the same way with the same respect.
Well, I just think that's fantastic, because what you described is just complete transparency, integrity, and those values, they engender trust. And of course, trust is the most important thing, isn't it, when you're dealing with large sums of money?
It really is. But the way I tend to do it is that I tend to go and find the deals.
Yeah.
I find the deals, sort the deals out. So I do all that side of it. And normally my backers purely do the money. So there's no point having partners going to do the same as you. It's absolutely pointless doubling up. So you each have to have a role, and you each need to know about the other's role to a point, but only to a point. You don't want them interfering too much with you, and you don't want to be interfering with them. And if you trust them, then obviously you don't need to interfere with them. But it's very important that you each have each other's roles, and you stick to that. That's very important.
Definitely. So, John, I mean, let's talk about how you use your so let's say interpersonal talents in terms of actually securing deals. How important is it to have emotional intelligence, to be able to read people and to be able to bring your interpersonal skills to negotiation?
I think it's absolutely vital whether you're dealing with agents or whether you're dealing direct with the owner. Sometimes you're doing both. Knowledge is power. So the more you get to know about why the property's on the market, what their issues are, what they're concerned about. Not everybody is concerned about getting the most money. Not everybody's concerned about that. Everyone thinks people are, but they're not. So
Yeah.
in certain cases, you are able, if you can complete within a week or two, that might be more important to them than actually having more money in 3 months' time. They might need the money. You might be getting them out of a fix, out of a problem. So it really just depends. Other people would rather squeeze the most they can out of a deal, which I understand. And if they want to do that, the deal's probably not for us. I think the other thing is to realise that no one can buy everything. And if one backer's got their money out, another backer might well do it or whatever. So, I often get a fee for finding deals for other people. Now that might sound a
Yes.
bit odd for someone in my situation, but no one has got a bottomless pit. And sometimes we have the money to spend, sometimes we don't have the money to spend. But if we don't have the money to spend, we always tell the agents we do, because I can always find a back, or if it's that good, I can always find one of my major backers always said to me, John, if the deal's good enough, I'll find the money. And that's the right attitude.
Yes.
If the deal's good enough, I will find the money. So you're always available, you've always got money, you're always available on the phone or by email, and you can always view a property very quickly. All those things help out an agent. You need to help an agent out and make it easy as possible for them to deal with you, not be difficult. And of course, we also pay finder's fees.
Yes.
So if they're not retained on a property, they might have looked at this property and another agent might have got it for sale.
Yeah.
In which case they can act for us. So we will pay them 2% finder's fee for finding the deal for us. And over the years, people say, how come you find so many property deals? So it's quite simple. We pay people. It's not rocket science.
Yes. I mean, you pay people, but you also deliver. Because you do what you
we
say
deliver,
you're going to do.
Yeah, we say what we're going to do. If there's an issue and a problem, get out in the open early on and say, look, I'm sorry, I know we agreed to pay this money, but this is the issues that have come up. What should we do about it? And work together to try and sort those problems out. And if you can't sort them out, you're better off to walk away.
Yes.
But, the thing is, why is someone going to pick the phone up to me rather than someone else? That's the key. You've got to be the person they phone first rather than last.
Yes. And so we touched on it a little bit, but what actually gets you into that pole position?
That's interesting. I think obviously a finder's fee does help, but they may well be retained already, in which case you don't pay them. They might be retained by they might be getting a fee off the seller. So if that's the case, then obviously you're not having to pay them anything either, which is amazing, really. So they bring you a great deal, and you don't have to pay them. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Really. When you think about it, it's mad.
Yes.
So I think reputation, which is something that you gain over the years, obviously, and I appreciate if you're just getting into the business, you haven't got that. But really, it's all personal. The more people you get to know, the more contacts you get to know. I try and still meet one new person a day. Now, with LinkedIn, you can meet 10,000 people a day. I appreciate, but I mean, and I don't mean they're not genuine, but I mean one-to-one. So meeting someone one-to-one by email or phone, I always try and meet one new person a day.
That is amazing. That is a real commitment.
Stick to that. If you can stick, you'll build up a huge number of people and also that way you get to. I mean, I've got one or two people who bring me deals who I've worked with for 20 or 25 years. If they say the deal's a good deal, I'll go and look at it because I know it will be. And, these people can earn 50, 100,000 a year out of us, probably a bit more. I work closely with them. I know them. I trust them. and that you just build up connections and people you can work with, and and anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. And people say, "Oh, I was up doing a seminar in Manchester the other week, the last big deal I did in Manchester was 1992. That's how old I am." And they said, "Well, it's all right for you because talk about finding deals. You're all right for you because you know loads of people." I said, "How many people do you think I know in Manchester now?" I said, "You know people around the table. You far more people in Manchester than I ever know." I said, "You're the ones with the contacts in Manchester, not me. But you need to use those contacts. You need to talk to them. You need to tell them what they want." So many people, and now I start my seminars by saying, you need to know what you want to do. Because if you don't know what you want to do in property, then how the hell is anyone going to ring you up and say, "I've got this deal for you"? Because if you don't tell them, "Well, I buy blocks of flats, or I convert flats, or I'd like to buy land with planning permission on it, or I like to buy it without planning," unless they know what you want to do, they're not just going to ring you on a whim. They need to know what type of property you buy and what you do. And if you can't tell them that, "Oh, we buy anything, we do anything," then you won't get a phone call.
So it's really about being very, very clear, very transparent, and being available, building those relationships.
And it's much easier these days than it's ever been before, Jane.
Yes.
You've got emails, you've got LinkedIn, you've got all the social media, and we never had any of that. You've got these property clubs now, which are great, where people can go along, like-minded people, go along, meet other people in a similar position. If you believe half what they say, you're probably right. Everyone's a bit of a show-off, So they're doing 20 properties a year, they're probably doing 5, or whatever it might be. But you're meeting like-minded people, get a connection with them. You might find a backer there. I mean, it's amazing what you can do. There's all these peer-to-peer lenders now. It's the amount of funding available is absolutely phenomenal, and nothing like it used to be. So it's made my job a lot harder because we've got a lot more competition.
Right.
I would say, and we end up doing more and more difficult and sophisticated deals to make the same money.
Yes.
Because all the easy stuff, the low-hanging fruit, if you like, is just taken, and people pay a lot more money than we will. So you get people in property who say, "Well, I'm going to buy that because it looks cheap." But they haven't worked out why it's cheap. They haven't worked out if they're going to make any money on it. It's absolutely crazy. But they just think it's cheap, so they buy it. And of course, over the last certainly 8 years, 9 years, it's just gone up with inflation. But I don't call that property developing. That's not property developing or investing, to be honest with you. That's just buying a property and holding it, and it just goes up in value, and then you sell it or refinance it or do what you want. You're not really creating any value. Property developing is all about taking a project and creating a profit out of that straight away, not waiting 5 years to do so.
Yes, and of course, the other thing is that's also quite risky, isn't it? Because we've seen here in the southeast, particularly with the uncertainty around Brexit, the property values have dropped quite significantly over the last 2 to 3 years. So that's caused problems for several more amateur developers, hasn't it?
Yes, and what I'm finding now, I'm getting calls every week at the moment from people who have got themselves into difficulty, which is a shame. But you can't go borrowing the money at 15% interest and expect to make unless it's a fantastic deal, and expect to make a big profit, because all your profit, if there's any profit, is going to go in interest payments.
Yes,
at 15%. Yes. But that's what's happening. So they're borrowing the money, far too much money. I can't make a lot of money out of developing property if I'm paying 15-20% interest rate. Who could?
Yes.
I'm okay, but I'm not that good.
No. So, John, let's talk about your incredible project in Ipswich, the Winerack. That's quite a story, isn't it? I went to see it last week, and it's such an impressive project. I'm sure that our listeners would love to hear about it.
Okay. I used to go around the country buying tower blocks off local authorities in the late 80s and 90s, refurbishing and selling them on individually. And then the 92 recession came, and I've survived 3 property recessions. The game, if you like, of doing that stopped really. And then we moved on to converting a lot of listed buildings into back from commercial to residential, which of course the buzzword now is commercial to residential. It's been, we were doing it in the 80s. I'm sure people were doing it in the 1940s, 1930s, and before then. But there's nothing really new. There's nothing really new in property. So the project, which was called the Winerack originally, nicknamed the Winerack because from a distance it looks like you're putting bottles of wine in a rack, because what happened was the shell of the building got built 20 odd stories high, but it was never filled in, if you like. So from a distance it looked like someone was putting, you could put wine bottles in each apartment, if you like. And that was, and work ceased in 2008 during the property recession, 2009. And it was owned by one of the banks in Ireland, so it went into NAMA, which was the Irish government's bad bank, if you like. They put all their assets that were underwater into this national bank, and then from then they sold them all off. And obviously, based in Ipswich, and with this project in Ipswich, with the Winerack being in Ipswich, I took some interest in it. And from 2010 onwards, really, I would keep looking at it, thinking. It's too soon to do it, too soon. And obviously they wanted to wait until they could get some money for it as well, the bank did. So in about 2015, again, relationships, Savills, who were acting for the bank, rang me and said, John, what about this? They've told us that they want to shift it now. I said, okay, we'll have a look at it. So we had a look at it and we decided to purchase it. And they came to us partly because, one, we're local, and secondly, I had experience in that field. So we purchased it. First of all, before you purchase it, you need to work out whether, one, it's structurally sound, which it was. 2, that we believe we could sell them all, which we believe we can. 3, what's it going to cost us to do? The whole project needs to be analysed. And we actually spent £600,000 before we purchased it.
Right. It's a very, very significant sum. Very significant.
Yeah. We did have it bought subject to planning permission because there was an extra floor that they kept. The last developer put an extra floor on without permission.
Right.
So it unravelled a few things. So we bought it subject to planning permission, and also sorting out what's called the 106, because at the time 30 odd the flats were meant to be for social housing, and I don't believe that social housing works. A mixed tenure in blocks of flats don't really work very well in my experience.
Mm-hmm. So
the deal was that had to be removed, otherwise we wouldn't purchase it. But during that period of time, we spent £600,000, mainly once we knew we were going to be doing the deal.
Yes.
To analyse it, get all the reports together. Because what you've got to remember is that when you buy and this is a very important thing to remember, when you buy a property off an administrator or a receiver, they won't give you any information on it. They've got no information. They've taken it off whoever had it for sale before, or who owned it. They've got no information, and they won't give you any information. They don't care. They just want to sell it.
Yeah. So
they're not going to go unravelling and finding different plans for you or anything else. That's up to you. So I describe it as like investigating a murder. You're literally starting off with nothing, and you've got to build a picture of what happened and why this is as it is, and so on. And one of the major things with the building, the Winerack, was to remeasure it, to make sure that it's been built in the right position and it's built straight. Because if it's not built in the right position, you've got a problem with the planners. If it's not straight, then when you put cladding on the outside of the building, it exaggerates that issue and that problem. So you really need to know that it's in alignment with the plans and built to the plan specifications. So anyone who's buying a property or properties that has not finished the job, the workers are installed and it's on the market, part finished, you really need to make sure that work they've done so far has been done in accordance with the plans and in accordance with building regulation. Because if it isn't, the whole thing might need to come down and start again.
Wow, and that would be a huge event. And very, very expensive.
Yeah, I think to blow up the Winerack would have been about £750,000 probably.
Right.
So that's not something you want to do if you can help it.
No.
And obviously we didn't need to. And actually, everything was spot on. The next challenge we had was funding it, because I thought that we would be able to fund it relatively easily. Remember, we're going back a few years now.
Yes.
And it turned out that because it was part finished, although we went to our usual banks, most of them were very nervous about it and wanted to charge us more interest rate because they were nervous about the fact it's part finished. And, anything part finished is always difficult to fund.
Right.
Because they're nervous about why it's part finished and why this, why that, why the other. So in the end, we had a very good MP here called Ben Gummer, who sadly lost his seat, but he was a very good MP. And he said to me, John, if you have any problems, let me know and I'll see if I can help you. So I went to him and cut a very long story short, the government funded the project. Sadly, they do want all their money back with an interest rate on it, which is a shame, because it would have been good if they didn't, but there we go. So, and that's under the Homes England banner now. It's morphed. It started off as one fund, but now it's all under the Homes England banner. And the Homes England are really like the government bank. So what they do, they fund projects, anything from five units upwards now, which are difficult to fund with a normal bank. They will step in, help fund it, be a bit more imaginative with regards to how you pay it back, and a bit of flexibility there. But they want their money back and they want proper interest on it as well.
Yes.
Because they're trying to, last year I think we built 230,000 houses in the UK. They want to get that up to 300,000, and they know the only way to do that is to bring back the smaller independent developers and builders like ourselves. The big 10 builders probably build 60% of the houses in the UK. And what they're trying to do, in the 1970s, the small builders and developers built 70% of the houses, something like that.
Yes.
So what they're trying to do is support the smaller developers, and we will be considered one of the smaller developers, 150 flats on that scheme, but we still be considered one of the smaller developers. And actually, the money we borrowed from the government was the most they've lent to any private property company up to this
Wow. Really, that's incredible. So John, how much are the anticipated sales on the whole development once you've sold everything?
Hopefully about 35 million, and the build cost about 26.6 million. So we've come in terms of time, 2 months early, and in terms of budget, within the contingency budget. And that's really important, that you have a contingency sum. So it doesn't matter whether you're doing one house or whether you're doing 50 houses or whatever. You need a contingency sum. And on a new build, that's probably 5%. So you need to know you have 5% cash spare to add to the build costs should you need it. If it's conversion, you probably need 10 or 15%, because with conversions, you can't see everything that you're doing to start with, and there could be more problems you haven't anticipated. So it's very, very important that you have a contingency sum, and that sum is already funded. So you're not then scrapping around for the money, and you can pay the builder at the end and all the rest of it. Very, very important.
Amazing. What an incredible project. So let's move on to talking about your education and your books, John, because I know that you want to give back.
Yeah, well, how it all happened, really, it happened, I was starting to listen to a number of people, supposed experts in the property field, and a couple of years ago, and I thought, well, I'm not sure some of this advice is that good. And really, I thought, you know what? I'll write a book, because I really don't think some of this advice is very good at all. Some of it's okay and some of it isn't. And some of it's probably fraudulent, but that's another story. So I wrote, and then from that book, my first book, I then started getting, calls, and I just put it on Amazon. I didn't think any more of it really. And then I started getting calls from TV, and how do I come and see you? Are you doing any seminars? Are you doing this? I said, well, no, not really. I'm busy doing my own property deals. But anyway, so what happened in the end is that I've started doing some seminars, and they've been well received. And then I've done the second book, because people said, well, what about, I've done this now. Well, now I need to do more sophisticated stuff, John. So I wrote a second book. And then last year we owned Auction House UK. We owned myself, my business partner we owned 50% of it. We sold our shares. We had 42 franchises in the end across the UK selling property at auction. So a lot of people would ask me about auctions, obviously, because of my connection. I said, well, best I write a book about that, because buying and selling at auction is, it's a great. People say, "Oh, I can't find a property, or I can't find a deal to buy." Well, there's 3,500 properties in catalogues in auctions every month. If you can't find a deal out of that lot, then you really need to give up and go home. So people are nervous about auctions. So I've hopefully written a book that dispels all the fear.
Yes.
Of going to an auction and buying an auction, and what to be careful for. And you have to be careful at auction. The most important thing is you need to find out why that property is on the market, even more so than when it's on with a traditional estate agent or whatever. When it's on the market, Now, what I find with a lot of this education that's around, one, it's been most of it's produced by people who have never done the deals themselves.
Yeah.
So if you're spending money on education, ask the question: how many deals have you done? Who's the person taking the course? What have they done? What have you done? If they're just an educator, they're probably a very good educator, but they've never been out and done it themselves. And people are spending so much on education that they haven't got the deposit to go and buy something.
That's
and actually
true.
going to buy a property and getting on with it is really the answer. You can only learn so much from someone that's telling you. And the other issue I find is that they're telling you what to do and what to buy, which I think is the wrong way around, because it's not their money and it's not their profit.
No.
And they don't know what the person's interested in. So what I do, I start off the other way around. So I say to people, right, in my seminars, you have to decide, like I said earlier, you have to decide what you want to buy. I will give you the tools to help you buy whatever you want, but I can't dictate to you what you buy. I'm not telling you to buy HMOs. I'm not telling you to do this, do that, do the other. You can do all those things if you want, but you have to decide what you want to do yourself. Because if you're not interested in it and have a passion for it, you won't do a very good job. So it's really important that you know yourself what you want to do. And I can help you decide that, but ultimately it's your decision. So I'm not dictating to them they should be doing rent to rent or HMOs or any of these things that a lot of these people are saying, that's their strategy. Well, the strategy should be whatever you're interested in. And if the deal doesn't work, you mustn't force it to work. It either works naturally and there's profit in it, or there isn't. So all these educators come up with the idea of, well, they're also almost forcing a deal to make it work. Round pegs in square holes. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Walk away from it. Don't try and force it to work by all these fancy ideas of delayed this, delayed that, not paying for it for 5 years, and all this stuff. All you're doing is gambling. It either works or it doesn't work. You can either make 20-25% net profit on a deal, or you can't. And if you can't, walk away and find what you can.
Yeah, it's very, very black and white, isn't it, John? Property is black and white. Yes, exactly. Right. Well, thank you very much for that. Let's just move on and talk about your political activities as well, because that's something that's very important to you as well, isn't it, John? So how long have you been involved in politics?
Not that long, really. I was an armchair question time, one of those Thursday night people who used to shout at the television. Frustrated with all sides of politics is difficult at the moment, very difficult. But here in Ipswich, I got involved more so when I started getting involved with the Winerack here in Ipswich, because Ben Gummer had been so helpful and kind to me. We became donors of the party, and I helped him, canvassing. It's the least I could do, because he helped me. But I tell you what, if I knew what I know now when I was 21, I would have joined then, and I do this thing, we do these talks at these exhibitions and profit exhibitions and so on, where I get out my Conservative membership card and I say about contacts and relationships and getting to know people. And I say for £25 a year, you can join this club. And it's one of the oldest political parties in the world, the old. I said, you can have access to some very, very influential people for £25 a year. Why the hell wouldn't you do it? And a number of people have joined since, actually. So I think I should be on commission with the Conservative Party. I've seen to signed a few people up. And the thing to remember with all these political parties is especially with the Conservatives. I don't agree with every policy they have. I'm sure every MP doesn't agree with every policy they have. But the alternative is pretty scary. And certainly for property, if we were to let Labour in, that would devastate the property market.
Yes.
And it's a very, very serious situation we're in. And we've got to just make sure that the Conservatives return to Parliament with an overall majority.
Definitely. Well, that's really, really interesting, John. So what are your hopes for the next election and for the outcome of Brexit?
Well, I'm very excited about next year because I think the Conservatives will get an overall majority. I'm not sure it'll be huge, but I think it'll be an overall majority. I think we'll get Brexit done, as Boris says, because we've just got to get that sorted out and move on. And I think if that happens, I think next year could be a very good year for the property industry, because I think there's a lot of pent-up demand. And I think with the Brexit deal in place and with Conservatives back in government, you'll find everyone's confidence will return. And I think that next year will be a very good year, Jane.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you so much, John. It's been such a fantastic interview.
No, it's been a pleasure talking to you again, Jane. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
So if people wanted to get in touch with you, John, what's the best way?
Best way is to contact me by my website, johnhowardpropertyexpert.co.uk. I've got a number of seminars already booked in and on my website for next year. And I'll be speaking at a number of events as well next year as well.
Thank you so much, John. It's been great to have you. I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Jane. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Connector podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, why not head over to janebaylor.com and order a copy of my free report on building your personal brand. I'd love to connect with you on social media. And finally, don't forget to like and subscribe to my podcast so that you never miss a show. Thanks for listening in and see you soon.